Hi there, I'm Chantal Westerman with ConciergeQ, and you are here in Sun Valley, Idaho at the Sun Valley Festival, the first actually Sun Valley Film Festival. And I am with, he has so many titles, but I like to just call him the fabulous Bob Poole because he's a writer, he's a director, he's a producer. And the film that's showing at the Sun Valley Film Festival here is called War Elephants, which, boy, did it move me. It touched me, it moved me, it just did so many things to my soul. So my first question for you is, what kind of impact did the war that took place for 16 years, I imagine, in Mozambique, have on the elephant population, but it must have been other animals as well?
Well, it was devastating in a lot of places, but in Gorongosa National Park, where we're working, it was particularly bad. There was about 95% of all the animals were killed. It was a conflict, that went on for a long time. First there was a war for independence, and then there was a conflict that actually was part of the Cold War, if you will. They call it a civil war, but it wasn't really a civil war because it was all coming from pressure from the outside, and east against west, essentially, all culminating in Mozambique. And Gorongosa National Park sits a dead center in the country, and it was the epicenter of the war for the most part. The soldiers from both sides of the conflict were fighting over the park for a lot of reasons, but one, so they could take control of that giant food source. So the animals were killed to feed soldiers, and the ivory was traded for weapons. So after the war, there was a vacuum, and there was still quite a lot of animals left, but then professional meat hunters came in and killed almost what was left for to feed people. So
devastating.
Yeah, it was really bad.
I think most people know, and I'm such an animal advocate. I rescue in my world. That's my service to the world. I spend a lot of time around with and for animals, and it's certainly no secret that animals are some of the most intelligent and social animals on the planet, probably.
Elephants.
Yes, elephants specifically, I think. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Elephants are incredibly intelligent and social. Elephants grow up in family groups. So when you see groups of elephants, they're always family. So you have a great-grandmother, grandmothers, and mothers, and they continue having babies, well into their late 50s. So all the offspring, all the babies that you see in a group, they all grow up in a family. Males leave their families at around 15, 16, and they go and come. They're free to go and come, and they come back to visit their mothers throughout their lives. So, but when you see groups of elephants, they're always related. I will have to say that, the thing about Gorongosa was it was just heavily impacted by all the conflict there. But now, you see, it's a fantastic place for elephants because there's a lot of habitat for them, and at the moment, there's no poaching pressure on elephants. But that's because most of the elephants that were killed, they were killed for their ivory. So the ones that are left are, in any group of elephants, there are elephants that don't have tusks. And so those were not, the soldiers didn't waste their bullets on those individuals without tusks, and so those are the ones that have survived. And so the population in Gorongosa is pretty much tuskless, or very small tusks, and there's not a lot of poaching pressure as a result. So luckily, Gorongosa, for the moment, is safe from ivory poaching, but elephants across Africa right now are getting slaughtered to feed the demand for ivory that's going to the east, China, Thailand.
That's what I was thinking before I talked to you this morning. I was driving up from Haley, and I thought, if elephants were not being annihilated the way that they are, they have so much to teach us.
Absolutely.
So what do they have to teach us? Because you, more than anybody that I know, knows elephants?
Right. Well, you know, elephants are in a way, in a lot of ways, they're much like ourselves. They have they live long lives. You know, they live into their 70s. They stay together with their families. They're highly social and intelligent. they look after each other. They adopt. They do all kinds of.
They do. They adopt. Like if a mother elephant is killed and
absolutely.
there's a baby.
You know, they cherish their babies, and even in a family of elephants, you'll have aunties like almost fighting over who gets to take care of babies, and so adoption is huge in elephants, and it's really fortunate because, you know, especially in places, it's tragic that now all across Africa elephants are just really getting hammered. And of course, poachers for ivory take out the big elephants first. They take out the big bulls, which are super important because they're the breeders. You know, elephants do select for size. Size matters, and females like big elephants because they protect them. You know, when they come into their estrus cycle, males are attracted, and lots of males come around, and they choose the biggest male because then they don't have to be mated by everybody, and he'll protect her against others. So big males are important, but they're getting wiped out for their ivory. And big females are the oldest females, and the oldest females, because elephants continue to grow throughout their lives, but the oldest females are the ones that are targeted by poachers as well because they carry heavier ivory. So, but they're the leaders. You know, elephant groups are led by matriarchs, and the matriarch is the oldest female in the group. Yes. She's the wisest, she has the longest history and the longest memory. Elephants have incredible memory, it's not a joke. And so they remember details from when they were babies, and when there's droughts and when things get bad, they know places to go that others don't because they've been around longer. So they actually lead the families as matriarchs, and they're the ones, when you watch this film, they're the ones that are charging us all the time because it's always the matriarch who charges because she's protecting her family.
Speaking of those charges, which when I watched the film and I would see you in the Jeep with your sister, who we'll talk about in just a second, and the elephants would charge you, were there times, this is probably a really silly question, there must have been times, let me rephrase, where you had just a moment or two of thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? Were there fearful moments?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, any one of those elephants can flip the car in a second. They can crush it they have even though they're in Gorongosa, tusks are not huge, but there are some with some pretty, you know, hefty, you know, but the trunks, you know, elephant can do a lot with its trunk, and just the sheer impact of an elephant. And I've been hit, so I can tell you, I've been hit and driven, you know, hard. So it's really, but the car itself, you know, you can try to protect yourself, but, you know, with building reinforcements and everything. But I always said it was elephant resistant, not proof.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. Very well said. You know, I had the great pleasure to live in South Africa to actually make a documentary some years ago. And we were in Schluisluis in South Africa. And we would be driving, and one of our drivers would stop and say, Chantal, don't move, everybody don't move, and put your head down. And a herd of elephants would come through the forest, the jungle. And I was astonished at how quiet they were.
Yeah, totally.
It's just that swish, swish, swish.
Yeah.
Is that everywhere?
Well,
yeah, they
don't make a lot of noise. They, you know, they have very thick pads on their feet, and they can move out really silently, incredibly silently. Listen, I will say, with these elephants, you see in the movie, if you watch the whole thing, you see towards the end, you know, we make a lot of progress. And these elephants are, as I said, they're highly intelligent, and they're very quick learners. So the groups of elephants that we came in contact with a second time and a third time, you know, by the fourth time, they're totally relaxed around us. I had a fantastic experience after the film crew had left, and after, you know, my sister had left, and I was there out still filming, but had come across a group of elephants that had charged, in the beginning, and had been very aggressive and scared and threatening and all these things. And over time, they had come to accept us. In fact, it was one group that we first saw come out in the open and pass us. I think that you'll remember it in the film. But
oh yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
They came so close with their babies all grazing around the car, and the mothers relaxed and nursing, and the matriarch there, and they stayed for close to an hour, and when they finally left, they came even closer to just have a very close look at me in the car.
And do their trunks ever touch you?
No, not that close.
No.
I mean, you wouldn't want it there. I mean, they at this point, they wouldn't come that close, but I'm talking, 20 meters or so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you did them an act of kindness by what you're doing?
Oh, absolutely, and I'm sure they recognize that.
Yes.
I'm positive.
Yes.
They know. You see, elephants will know. They'll know us, our car. They'll know us personally. Once they've come to know, for instance, those individuals, they've seen us 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and they know exactly who we are. I mean, they know the sound of our car. They know the smell of everything. They have an incredible sense of smell and hearing. And while they don't see all that well, they can come close and have a look. So, but they know. They definitely know who we were. And they knew that we were there, not threatening them.
Of course. And I'm thinking of the silliest thing, and it's got to come out of my mouth because maybe you'll appreciate it. But there's that wonderful old fable about when the Prophet Muhammad is marching towards Mecca with his thousands of soldiers, and on the road they come across a mother dog and puppies, and he stops and he says, "Do not harm that mother dog and the puppies." And he actually posts one of his soldiers there to protect him, and thousands of soldiers are going to war to Mecca, and someone says, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Verily, for every act of kindness that you do towards an animal, there will be a heavenly reward." So I imagine there's a lot of heavenly rewards coming your way, my friend.
I hope so. But
yes.
Yeah. I think that elephants definitely deserve it. They're incredibly tolerant in so many ways. I mean, when you think about what those elephants in particular went through, and then the fact that they could accept us at all now is amazing. My sister Joyce, she's probably the world's leading expert on understanding things about individual elephants.
She is the world's leading expert.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that know a lot about elephants, but Joyce, she's been at it for a long time. She discovered some really amazing things about elephants that change the way all of us think about them today. But one thing that's always been Joyce's sort of expertise is understanding individuals and recognizing individuals out of many, and being able to sort of just understand what they're doing. And it was tremendous to have her part of that team, part of my partner, because she would pick up on things that I wouldn't see, even though I've been around elephants for a long time myself.
So you're saying she could look at them and say, that one's personality leans towards this, that one's is it like that? They have their own little quirks?
Oh, definitely. They're individuals, so they all behave differently, and then, but they also, a lot of people would look at, a herd of elephants and see big gray elephants with, things with big ears and trunks, but she can see individuals out of a herd, and it's amazing, and you can do that if you look at, it's like you looking at human faces, you can start to see individuals even among people that look, when you see twins and things like that, sooner or later you can you know who's who. It's like that with elephants, but it's also understanding their behavior and what they're about to do. So, for instance, if they hold their head in a certain way, or their tail, or they move their body and they look in a certain, you can say, well, they're nervous about this, or they're about ready to do this, or they're not, So it's very helpful to know those things. But the thing about these elephants that I was going to say is that, so imagine that you're an elephant in a family with mothers and grandmothers and everything, and then suddenly, sort of 95% of your family gets wiped out. and 90% of the other family over there gets wiped out, and the other one over there gets wiped out. So now you have these orphans running around, or young elephants, or elephants that maybe not so young, but they don't have tusks. Well, they've lost their families. So what they do is they come together, and they create sort of new families out of what's left. And it's extraordinary because, you know, one thing that Joyce noticed, she called them floater females, because they would, one time we would see them, they would be with this group, and another time she would see them, or we would see them, they would be with another group. And that's not normal in elephant society, but it just shows that, you know, they've adapted to sort of, they understand, they know who everybody is. There's some 400 elephants possibly in that, but we're sure they know, they all know each other. You know, it's like, how many people do you know in Ketchum? Well, I'm sure I know 400 people, and I know that those elephants all know each other. So it's interesting that these elephants are sort of floater females exist there.
Yeah, we've got some floater females in Ketchum too.
Yeah.
When you think about it. Were you inclined to name them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and you have to. I mean, the very first thing we're going to do now, this is not a project that was made for the film. This is work that has to be done. The park is a fantastic park. I mean, it was one of Africa's absolutely most magnificent park, and it still is. The only difference is that it's changed. The habitat is there. It's totally a wilderness now. It's the best place you could imagine to go if you're looking for a place to go on safari, because you'll have it to yourself. And the wildlife that is there, I mean, I've been working there since 2008, and now what's amazing is that just in that amount of time, the wildlife has just exploded. You know, all the grazing animals are coming back by, you know, you just can't believe how much wildlife there is now. Things like, big things like bolt grazers, buffalo, and hippo, you know, they take a long time to come back. They breed slower, and their herds were massive. There was some 60,000 buffalo there. So, you know, we have brought in some 250, and there was a population of maybe, nobody knows for sure, but say like 100, 150 buffalo that survived somehow. So, you know, those things will take time, but these other things that breed every year, boy, they're coming back so fast. So it's a very exciting place to come. You know, if you're looking for a great place to go in Africa. Yeah,
and a lot of people who come to ConciergeQ are, by the way, looking for a great place to go in Africa, so this is great.
Well, Mozambique is great. You know, you have this coastline, this enormous coastline, roadless, with beautiful islands and incredible beaches, magnificent Indian Ocean, and then you've got these Gorongosa National Park, and there are other national parks. The Mozambicans are keen on their parks, and they've just added another new park called the Carimbas, which also it's in the northern Mozambique, but it has coastline and, you know, elephant habitat and wildlife habitat. And, you know, for instance, in Gorongosa, we've just gazetted the Mount Gorongosa into the park, and that makes Gorongosa one of the, if not the most biodiverse national park in the world, not including you know, marine parks, because we have this amazing ecosystem, equatorial Africa, high mountain down to the coast, and through the middle of the Rift Valley. Ed Wilson, E.O. Wilson, the famous, you know, grandfather of conservation biology, is working in Gorongosa, and he's writing a book actually called Gorongosa, A Window on Eternity. And it's because he has fallen so in love with this national park, and sees it as such an incredibly spectacular place for science. You know, one wonderful thing about Gorongosa is that you have this place, this amazing ecosystem that was full of wildlife. It was pretty much wiped out. Now it's coming back. It's a grand experiment for what we might have to do for the rest of the planet. If you think about the way that we're destroying this planet, at the speed we're destroying it at, how are we going to do, if we don't figure out how to put it back together, you know, what are we going to end up like? So Gorongosa is this wonderful place, and not only as a great science experiment, but as a place that when people come there, you know, when people come, tourists come, or visitors, people come to experience that place, it's a big story, and they feel part of it, you know, because there's not so many people. It's not like going to the Serengeti or something where thousands and thousands of people before you have come and experienced the same thing. You're experiencing something fresh and new and different. And we're building wildlife camps, you know, luxury camps, and there's a hotel now at the, you know, what was a bombed out ruin of a war. There's now a beautiful hotel and good food, and you know, it's a real, there's not a lot of really positive environmental success stories in Africa, but Gorongosa is definitely one of them.
You know, I always think that it's difficult to leave Sun Valley. I mean, I live in Haley. I live in a teeny little townie. And when I have to go to New York for something or LA and come back, it's really a re-entry. What must it be like for you to be there for months at a time and then come and land at JFK or LAX?
Hell yeah.
What a weird feeling.
Well, it's funny you call it re-entry, because that's what I call it. I call it re-entry, and it's really tough, and the longer you're gone, the harder it is, because you realize, like, so I was gone 10 months last year in Africa, and you know, at the end of the time, I just had things that I never used. I was just giving it away. You know, I was down to 2 pairs of shorts and a couple T-shirts and my shoes, you know, and that was, even that felt like too much. And, you know, and then you come home to this place and you have everything you could, every electronic gadget and, you know, way of getting your TV.
And the iPad is here.
And all this stuff. But, you know, so it's difficult to jump back and forth. But the iPad thing, look, this technology is important as well. Yeah. Because, you know, we can't isolate, we're not going back. And, but it is cool actually that in some ways, you know, all these giant things that used to have big computers are now, you know, getting the size of this, and they, you know, it helps. It helps. In fact, in Gorongosa, we're doing, we're going to do, we've done some really neat stuff. As I said, we're teamed up here with E.O. Wilson, who's doing his thing. He's also doing, I don't know if you read about these digital textbooks that Apple is doing.
I have.
Well, guess where the very first textbook lesson is being done? It's in Gorongosa.
In Gorongosa.
And we're going to do a digital field book. So you know, you'll have a moving map with, you know, that will track your place, and things will pop up that you can learn about in the location you are, and you can take photographs and upload them and help the scientists that are there. We saw this in this place, or these elephants were here, or whatever. So we're not, you know, we're not. Just because you know, I've got 2 pairs of shorts and a bunch of T-shirts, you know, we're still definitely moving forward in technology.
I have one more question. Actually, I have 10 more questions, but there's so many people lining up to want to talk to you here at the Sun Valley Film Festival. But my last question for you is, you must have, on occasion, come across tragedy. You must have found a baby elephant, or on what occasion did you cry? Even though you have to keep the producer's eye and the cameraman's eye and the director's eye, there must have been something where you were so moved, you just thought, oh.
You know, I am a pretty emotional guy, but I've seen a lot of tragedy with wildlife. You know, in Africa, we lived through a poaching, wave of poaching in the 70s and 80s that was just horrific. We lost in Kenya. We had something like 125,000 elephants, and we were down to 25,000. I mean, they just annihilated them for ivory. We stopped that. I didn't stop it, but it was stopped. My older sister had a lot to do with it. But it's happening again in a really, really bad way. And when you think about how these big elephants go down, you know, it's hard to kill an elephant with an AK-47, but that's how they do it. So they pump them full of holes, and it's really tough. The big elephants, they shoot at their feet, so they can't move anymore. It's really ugly, and it's happening right now as we speak. It's going on, I guarantee you, everywhere across Africa. So it is very emotional for me in the filming. No, I mean, I don't get so emotional over things I saw there. It is sad to think of all the animals that are being snared and et cetera, et cetera. I think in the film, you know, they talked about my father, and that always strikes a chord, you know, so that one got me going.
Yes.
Yeah, my father was passionate about conservation wildlife too.
Yeah. He was a remarkable guy.
Yeah, he was.
And clearly, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Thanks.
This is Bob Poole. I'm Chantal, and you are here at the Sun Valley Film Festival. War Elephants. Don't miss the film. Get the film. It's brilliant.